Welcome to the Integration Station. I'm Naturally Ashley, your host, here to guide you down the rabbit hole into the world of psychoactive plants, frogs, and fungi. Good morning, you beautiful souls, and welcome back to the Integration Station. I am Naturally Ashley, your host, here with the creator of Pace Radio Network, people advocating cannabis education. This is the guy that brought us on board and helped us spread the Integration Station across over 30 radio stations and more. So I really want to not only thank Al for being here and sharing his story with us today, but also for all the amazing work he's doing and helping creators like us here at Elemental Growth share our messages much farther and easier than would be possible. You know, what is happening here through community and collaboration is something that can be modeled across the world to really help create a more beautiful place for us to grow and thrive together collectively. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Al to all of you. You know, this is the guy that's often interviewing, and this time we're going to dig deep into his own story. We'll talk about cannabis and even share a little bit about his own psychedelic experiences. So stay tuned.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Go. Hello and good morning. It's Ashley here from Elemental Growth, and I've got a wonderful friend, a guy that's normally doing the interviewing, and this is Al Graham. And Al Graham is the guy behind Pace Radio Network, paceradio.net. It's a radio station that picked up the Integration Station, the whole reason why we're here and why we're connecting with so many more people. So I've been so grateful for this experience. You know, I never expected to even be doing the podcast that we were doing. You know, it was just something that came through on mushrooms one day. And then it got picked up, and I'm like, okay, well, this is cool. Let's ride this wave. It's fun. And I've really enjoyed it. I can't believe we're like 27, 28, like maybe even 30 episodes in by the time that this airs.
Correct.
I don't know what number you'll be in, but we'll find out. It might be around that number, though. So it's pretty incredible. It went fast. So fast. It's a good time. So I really wanted to hear more about your story. I realized, you know, I don't know too much about you. Like, I got this great opportunity, but I'm curious now, you know, who is Al Graham?
Who's this guy? That's right. Well, thanks for having me on, Ashley. Really appreciate it. Yeah, you just never know. Like I said to you just before we went live, is that you might have a question and I'll have a very surprising answer for people, because a lot of people don't know some of this stuff. Before I got involved in the cannabis community and doing things. So this might reveal a few things. You just never know. and thanks for joining the network too. It's been a very educational, and your broadcasts are being watched by people. It's an added spot for you to get your information and education out to the people, and people are looking for that. And you know, we cover psychedelics as well as cannabis on the Pace Radio Network.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful collaboration.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
The right time, right place kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. You know, that's how it all worked out, and it's worked out good. So, you know, people are getting educated, and you know, here on the Pace Radio Network, patient stories have always been important, because patients sharing their stories with others educate other people. And there's people who are out there that are looking for information, whether it's on psychedelics or cannabis. And if they can connect with somebody or hear the story of another patient, that themselves will educate them. and help improve their quality of life. So to me, a patient story has always been very important.
Yeah, and that's one of the new shows that you have out now.
Yeah, that was you just saw that was the release of a video that I just put together. It was an interview that I did with Haley and Cheryl Rose, and we interviewed on the Pace Radio show with Tamara and I back in January. And then what I did is I broke it down into segments of certain areas, whether it was her triggers, her medical condition, her daily regime, so on and so forth. Even like some of her advocacy, I called it advocacy, what she feels and how the medical program should go. So I broke them all down into segments and put titles in there, and I'm going to call it a patient story, because I really feel that patient stories are very important to share with other people. And it takes out, the whole interview is great, but what I've done is just focused on the patient. And I don't know how often they're going to be released, but I got my next one already started.
Oh, that's so exciting. And it is so important and empowering too to share your story. Everybody's is a little bit different, and it's like everybody has this other piece of the puzzle. It's so fascinating, and it's important to come together to see the bigger picture.
Yeah. When I got involved in this the cannabis community, when I first got diagnosed with Crohn's disease, I didn't have a spot to turn to get information. I didn't know where to go or anything, and I knew of a lady that I saw in the newspaper that I went to school with, and I got connected to her, and we ended up getting together every Tuesday, me and other patients with all different conditions. And we'd sit around, and we called it Token Tuesdays, and we would sit around and talk about our last week, how cannabis helped me here or helped me there, or I learned this new recipe or something, and it gave us a spot, basically like a little mini therapy session every Tuesday.
That's so cool. Token Tuesdays. Yeah, we could all learn a lesson of that, like this gathering. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it was. It was, and it was. And we, like, for example, there was another fellow there who had Crohn's disease, like myself, and he was on a biological drug, and he told me what he had experienced, and unfortunately for him, it was in a negative manner. He ended up in the hospital from it, and I didn't. I was on the same drug, and I didn't end up in the hospital. But it just shows that the drugs can affect people in different ways, as far as, for anything.
So tell me, where did it really start for you? When did you start getting diagnosed with different health issues? When do you stop feeling?
Yeah, I got diagnosed with Crohn's in June of 2003, and then in 2015, I was diagnosed with melanoma skin cancer. Those were my major things. The Crohn's disease, it was something that took me from left field. I didn't have a clue. I'd never even heard of it other than watching Blue Jay games. When the Blue Jays played at Exhibition Stadium, Fergie Oliver always talked about the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. That was the only spot I had ever heard of it. So when I got sick, it was like, wow, what's going on here? My clothes were basically falling off of me, and I had to tie them on, and I was going to work still. And in the end, my employer just told me to go home. You're sick, now go home. And I tried to go back 2 weeks later, and they wouldn't allow me to go back. And like I said, that was in 2003. I ended up being hospitalized for a week with a flare-up of Crohn's disease. And it wasn't, like I said, I'd never heard of it, so it was all new. And I just started learning different things, and I had to learn diet and lifestyle changes. But the one thing that I wanted to avoid was the Oxycontins and the Percocets, the painkillers that they were going to prescribe to me in order to deal with things. And I knew about their bit of their history at that time, and I didn't want to fall along that line. So I reached out to that lady who I mentioned. We would get together on the Tuesdays and said, what about cannabis? Was cannabis going to help me? And she said, yeah. And then her boyfriend at the time, I ran into him, and he started telling me about some of the medicinal benefits where cannabis would be helping me. So I'm very proud to be able to say that during the last 20 years that I've had Crohn's disease, I've only had 2 prescriptions for opiate drugs, and both times while I was in the hospital. They were administered through the IV at the time, and I guess the other one would be when I left the hospital the very first time. They gave me a prescription for Perks, and I went down to the pharmacy, got it filled, and all that. 3 years later, and 6 pills short, I returned that bottle to the pharmacy. Nothing but cannabis. That's all I've used this whole 20 years in order to deal with my pain. Does it work all the time? No, not all the time. Does it eliminate it completely? No, not all the time. Does it dull it? Sure. But the fact that I could take the painkiller pills, but does that eliminate everybody's pain? No. Do they take more pills? Yeah. Does it lead to an addiction problem? Yeah. Can it lead to death? Yeah. That's not going to happen to me with cannabis. I didn't want to become a death stat.
Yeah.
So I chose the cannabis route. I started smoking cannabis when I was 13, and so I knew that it wasn't gonna lead to the stuff that you're hearing out there, crazy people and murders and so on and so forth like that. So I knew the truth, but I didn't know any of the medicinal benefit. It was all purely recreational for me back then, obviously. And I stopped smoking cannabis for a while, sort of on and off, and then I ended up eventually smoking oil. And who knows? Who knew the stuff that I was smoking all those years back? I would say almost 40 years ago, 35, 40 years ago. Just that green slimy oil, we called it back then. Really, today I look at it as being the fecals of the world of today. But back then we put it on our paper. We didn't put it in a syringe or anything. We just put it in paper. When I got sick at the age of 41, the doctors were blown away. They said, how can you get sick? This condition is for elderly people and young people. It's not somebody who gets it in the middle age. And it was probably a couple of years later where I realized that I had stopped smoking oil 6 months before I got sick, and had consumed oil for 15 years daily till that point. Did the oil hold off my condition until I stopped consuming it? I don't know.
Yeah, you could have been one of those had it younger people.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. Who knows? But I ended up with Crohn's disease, and because I got Crohn's disease, I ended up losing a job that I had held for 22 years. It was a bit of a devastating moment, I'll tell you. But I feel I turned that around and was able to take something that was a bummer or a downer and turn it into a positive. And that was by educating people about cannabis. Crohn's disease, whether it was any other condition, just teach them about cannabis itself and how it can help people, whether it was from eating or help people with to be able to eat as it did with myself. There was times where I didn't want to eat because of my Crohn's disease. Who wants to shove something down a pipe? It's going to hurt, be painful. Who knows? It sends you back into the hospital again. So cannabis helped me want to eat, and here I am today, right? So Where did I go? I've sort of lost track where I was. So then they sent me home, work, did the education, wanted to teach people about cannabis, and that's where my advocacy started. Because after being sick, it was probably about 2.5 years after I had my Crohn's flare up where I actually got out there into the public. And at that time when I started doing this, I didn't use my real name. There was some concern, about what people would, think of me as a person. This guy's on cannabis, and that's a negative in society at that time. So, being that I was coming at it with a medicinal way, and people knew me in town where I lived because I had lived there for several years. I was involved in the community. I had been doing soccer, minor league soccer with the kids, baseball with the kids, because we had kids they were growing up, so they got into soccer and baseball. I got involved in that as coaches, got involved in minor hockey, spent almost 9 years in minor hockey. I was vice president in minor hockey for a couple of years, won an all-Ontario championship. People who knew who I was. So when I did come out into the open and come at it a medicinal way, people were more accepting of it, as far as the way that they didn't come at me in a negative, hard way when I came out in the public, because that included being in the local newspapers and quotes, front page stuff, that I interviewed by Chex TV and other networks. So eventually, it became accepted. People knew who I was. I was organizing and doing documentary films in a cafe in Campbellford, and then I spread that into locations out of town. I was in Belleville, Alderville, Peterborough as well, going around for 5 years, once a month on the Sunday, going around and educating people and talking to them about cannabis. And it just become natural. Between that and working with Treating Yourself magazine, where I was a writer, as a volunteer writer, where I wrote about advocacy events and what Treating Yourself was doing. Speaking publicly at non-cannabis shows such as international home shows or garden shows or wellness shows, and being a cannabis booth amongst furniture and housing really surprised a lot of people. And we would literally spend time over. One of the shows was a week long, 10 days long, and we would talk to thousands and thousands of people and give out brochures and magazines and talk to them. And believe me, when I was going through primary school, I hated talking in public, doing speeches and all that. But cannabis brought all that out. Talking publicly to people here with radio shows and podcasts and stuff like that. I hated writing in English in school, and I ended up, because of cannabis, I ended up writing for Treating Yourself magazine and Cannabis Digest. Well, because of cannabis, and I wanted to share the knowledge and education in order to, I should stop shaking the table, in order to share with other people, in order to educate them. Because we had been lied to all those years. Just think how many people could have been saved over this time. They've known that they discovered Dr. Shaughnessy back in the mid-1800s knew that cannabis could stop the children from shaking. Well, what was that? That was seizures. How many kids have died in the last 170 years? I was doing the documentary one day in Peterborough, and it didn't matter whether I had one person there, and sometimes I did 50 people at a show. And one particular day I had one person there, well actually it was two, or a couple. And when the show was over, they said to me, how come my daughter wasn't given the opportunity to use cannabis? She was dead. She passed away from seizures. I didn't know what to say. Prohibition, could have saved life, but stories and lies contributed to, I'm sure, many deaths.
Yeah.
It's so that's why I push and want people to, give them a spot here on the network in order to help and educate and talk about cannabis, and psychedelics and yourself. Psychedelics with me, sure. Presently, right now, I'm not. I got some frozen fudgy mushroom treats upstairs in the freezer, but really for me, it's been 40 years basically since I was. And back then, 40 years ago, it wasn't. People weren't talking about, as far as I know, mental health issues to help people with depression and so forth, with psychedelics. Back then,
these issues weren't as diagnosed back then either.
That's right, exactly. Back then it was just all about having a good time.
Yeah.
Mushrooms and smiling.
Yeah, but isn't that something to think about? It's like once it went into prohibition, that's when these mental health issues were coming up. Like I really do feel like our bodies are made for them. We've grown symbiotically with these plants, frogs, and fungi since the beginning of us.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like when I started growing cannabis, I thought, holy shit, a plant's got a tube down the middle of its system, right? We've got a tube down the middle of our system, right? We need nutrients to survive, right? Like calcium and iron. Oh, it's a superfood. The plant needs the same thing. We are the plant.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's all of this fractal effect is beautiful, and that's the doctrine of signatures. What you found out in that moment, how like sometimes people talk about, I saw geometric patterns and all this. What you saw in that moment, that connection to nature, that is the fractal effect. It's also this kind of old medicine of the doctrine of signatures, which is how people used to find out and document which foods are actually good for which ailment, and it's all about what it looks like. Again, this fractal effect. It's wonderful that you found that. And another amazing thing about it is a lot of these plants are superfoods. Especially cannabis. It's one of the top 10 in the world. Yeah,
exactly. And it's something that, should be shared and spread, like the hemp seed and stuff like that, because of the
I'm doing that this summer. I just got a new van, and I've got containers full, and I'm putting them everywhere.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, it can feed so many people.
Yeah.
And in so many ways.
Coming to a forest near you.
Yeah, exactly.
And forests everywhere.
I'll never say.
Every part can be used.
Correct. There's no reason for any waste. As long as you know how to do everything, there's nothing to go to garbage. Now, myself personally, I never did anything with roots over the years, but lots of other people have. It's probably about the only thing I can think of offhand that I haven't used is the roots.
I think they're fibrous. You make rope or concrete or so many different things.
Right. Yeah, I know the fibers, stem, stuff like that.
Yeah. They would be easier to take from the stem.
Yeah.
But you would get some heavy duty rope if you used it out of the root. And I don't know food wise what it would do.
Yeah, but. I've never experimented with it. And I've seen some stuff and people talk about nutrient value of the roots. There are people who talk about it. I just
try it fried or baked into a French fry.
I've just never done that. So, unfortunately, it's always other than that, I ended up putting the roots back in the compost and the recycle again, reuse.
Yeah, right? That's great too. Yeah. Feed the worms.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We had a great vegetable garden in our old house, I'll tell you. Yeah, it works really good in there, but
It works great as a companion plant too. There's so many different herbs and vegetables that grow symbiotically with, and you don't need to use any pesticides in that companion planting model either. So it's just wonderful.
Correct. Yeah, I've grown with rosemary, chives, and I'm thinking there's something else there over the years where I've had it in the garden with my cannabis plants.
Yeah, I did one with chocolate mint last year.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it got purple like the mint, but that could have been the type of cannabis plant too. So it's hard to tell, but it was interesting that it was the most purple of them all.
Yeah.
I didn't taste chocolate though.
No. Well, I've grown a chocolate plant. Well, it was within its name. Who knows, over time, people can mix up strains, or maybe somebody thinks it tastes different.
Yeah.
Than chocolate. Yeah. And then, growing techniques. If, depending on the way you're growing, if you're not producing some good quality terpenes, that, help create the flavor and the smells, then maybe, I lost that where I was going with that too. Jeez, I hate that.
That's all right. On that note, anyway, let's let our sponsor share the cool stuff that they're up to. You can think on that, and we'll have you right back in about 2-3 minutes or so. And yeah, thanks. We'll talk more on all kinds of good stuff.
All right, sounds good.
Bye, everyone.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Let's share Pace everywhere. That way it can help create peace. People everywhere advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
Pace Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
All right, so welcome back. For everybody who has been waiting, I'm going to ask the big question. Al Graham, tell me about the other psychedelics you've worked with.
Well, obviously, cannabis. Some people don't look at cannabis as a psychedelic, but it is. But as far as other stuff, earlier I mentioned some mushrooms. Like it's been 40 years or somewhere around there is what I mentioned at the time. And yeah, I had my time when I was younger. I'm going to say probably between the age of 17 and 23, somewhere in there, where I did experiment with psychedelics. And at that time, it wasn't, for any medicinal use. It was just, they were available, and I wanted to give it a try. So I ended up, during those times, LSD, acid, purple microdot, California sunshine, stuff along that line. Go to the local bar and pick it up, and go back to the house and have a party, right? Have a good time. Did that many times. Even while I lived in Toronto, because I lived, obviously lived in a small town, and then for a while there I moved to Toronto. And I had a spot where I could just drive into the car wash and drive out the other side with my LSD, my acid.
And so what drew you to it?
We did it all the time. What's that?
What drew you to it? Was it just the accessibility, or what drew you in to keep working with it?
Just to get stoned, to get high.
You liked the high. You liked the feeling.
Just like the high. Yeah, exactly. And that would be why, because there was no medicinal use for me then. It was just about getting high. So
elevated.
Yeah, and yeah, I hallucinated on them. Signs. If I was walking down the street and I saw a sign, I can recall a time where the sign turned into a big soccer ball that was spinning on a pole. Like, what the hell is that all about, right? there was times where the yellow jackets, quaaludes, what else was there? Bennies, all kinds of stuff. But that was 40 years ago. I haven't consumed this stuff since then. But it was all that experimenting of getting stoned and getting high and having a good time with our friends. It wasn't about anything else, really. But to tell you the truth, the one thing that I really hated about the acid, and that was the next morning. And I always felt greasy. Always felt like I had to wash my face and stop breaking out in acne, because it just, I don't know whether it was something that was in it that they were using to make it. I haven't got a clue. I just know that was my experience, is that after I did it the next day, I always felt greasy. And then there was sometimes stomach pain. And what was some people were saying? Well, that was caused from. I can't remember exactly what it was, but 40 years ago, right? We're not going to remember everything. And so I had my journey. I had my times during then. It's not what I'm seeing now, like with yourself, Ashley, and seeing through Steve and Cindy through the mushy moment. I'd never heard of a shaman or people helping people through with journeys or anything about that. And it just shows how everything's changed over the years. And society now is obviously more acceptable of them, because back then, society wasn't. And now we got states all over the place changing laws in order to allow psilocybin. MDMA and the whole bit. So things have really evolved, no doubt. And it's good to see, because it's the fact that it's helping people. And back then,
at a time when people need it. Yeah,
exactly.
And maybe those fun times will come. Maybe as more people are working with them again and remembering that life is about having a little bit of fun, riding the wave.
And they like microdosing. That wasn't anything turned back.
Oh yeah, I didn't hear about that either.
People pop mushrooms. Like I hated the taste of the mushrooms. I didn't. It had to be done in a cookie, something cooked, because I didn't like them. But I don't remember everybody talking about the microdosing, and it was just all about eating enough to get high.
Yeah, that was for me growing up too. The microdosing came after I became a mom, and I felt like that was the universe on my side. Like when I started to get gray hair, and now you like this style. I'm like, the universe is on my side. Thank you. It was very much like that. They helped. The microdoses helped at that time.
Yeah. Exactly. Now, so when people approached me here on the network about doing a psychedelic show, that helps explain why. But I had no issue of adding psychedelics to the network, because I myself had at one time had done them, and now that I'm seeing the medicinal benefit of them, hell yeah, I want them included, because of the fact that it's helping patients and helping people.
Yeah, and helping them help themselves. These are things for the most part from nature.
Yeah, I was a writer for Treating Yourself magazine, which I did for years there, and that's what it was all about. The magazine's called Treating Yourself for a reason.
Yeah,
you can treat yourself.
Yeah, treat yourself and then treat yourself. But not with the treats.
Yeah.
Find something else to fill that God hole that you love.
Yeah, so it's it's the whole journey of everything, through the psychedelics and then the cannabis and the things, and being able to reach out to people and educate them. As I said at the beginning, I lost a lot when I got sick from being involved in things. I was president of Action Off-Road Club at the time. The losing all that was really hard on me, but the cannabis was something that I was able to do. And they said to me at one point, do something. Don't sit around all day. Don't sit on your couch. Get involved in something. I've become a cannabis patient advocate, and spread the word, the knowledge, and it's turned a bad thing into a good thing.
Yeah, I love that. Napoleon Hill always would talk about turning your handicap into an asset. I try to do that with everything. There's so much power in it.
Exactly. So they've gone from the Crohn's to a guy who just wanted to talk about cannabis, and now a network that came out of that's broadcasting up to 10 shows a week.
Yeah.
Over several different platforms. So, it's not, there's no money maker involved in this. For me, it's all about getting that education and information out there so people can learn, and it's been a journey. The network is only 3 to 4 years old. Pace Radio Show, it's 10 years, and before then, 2008. So there's 15 years speaking publicly, trying to educate people about cannabis, and it's been a hell of a good ride. I really enjoyed it. I'll tell you.
Yeah, what a great resume, Hal. Honestly, you've been paving the way for so many and helping so many people really take their power back and get informed, patient informed.
Exactly, and that's and it's helped so many Because when you educate one person, they spread that knowledge on to others.
The ripple effect.
The ripple effect, exactly. And you know, they may not spread as much information, but it gets maybe enough for them to be curious. Like I got invited to a fire one year out somebody's yard, you know, nighttime party, and went there, and I was there with my friend Mike. He's in one of our commercials, and he had been involved with me doing these educational documentaries and going to shows and stuff like that in Toronto. And there was a young lady that came over to us and started talking to us about cannabinoids and our endocannabinoid system. And we went, wow, where'd you learn that? Just, I went to one of your shows.
That's great.
So it was good. It was good. We were really happy to see that. I didn't recognize her or anything like that, but that's just a sample of a person sharing and spreading that information, and my own information come back to me.
Yeah. That's so cool. What are some of the other things that you've seen happen in this cannabis space, and even with psychedelics too? You know, what are some of the other trends that you've seen? What are common questions you get?
Back when I was more advocate on the ground and all that, I was always, you know, getting those questions about medicinal and how it can help. I still get those. I got a guy who's been sending me messages during the broadcast. But the you know, people ask about how it can help. A lot of times, a lot of questions to do with mental health issues. And personally, to tell you the truth, I wasn't a person who had a lot of knowledge in that, and I always at that time would refer back to somebody who was in the booth with us, who was trained in that issue, and direct them to there, because why I felt to myself, why would I want to answer that person's question when I got somebody here who actually went to school to deal with mental health issues, and let them talk to them about it. Now, as far as that other stuff, a lot of people have come to me about the Crohn's, the arthritis. People, as I mentioned, gray heads in the documentaries. And that was because people were dealing with arthritis. And then there were some people that wanted to be able to use cannabis to get off of opiates because of the fact they were sick and tired of them as well. And what else did I get questions about? There would be a lot of people who wanted to know about, they didn't want to get stoned. Not everybody wanted to get high. Not everybody wanted to smoke. That's why I always found recipes were always something that was very important. You know, whether like in the magazines or making available to people. Let's see what else. It was just cancer, obviously. Over the years, I had lots of people that come to me from cancer, whether it was a police officer or even the mayor of our town. Even he stepped out and come and talked to me about it. And it got to the point where the two of us got together and did a broadcast on Rogers Community Television talking about cancer and cannabis and being involved with the mayor. Now, how often you get involved with the mayor and talk about cannabis and cancer? So people knew. It was great to be able to, you know, as I said at one point here, I was worried about people accepting cannabis and the thing, and you know, police officers to the mayor. So, cool. It was accepted. So, and now look at us. All the years later, we got a medical program. People were, you know, buying it in stores down the street. You know, so
yeah.
What else offhand was that? Did you want to know on there? I think there was something else too.
with trends, are you,
Trends.
like, obviously cannabis opened the door to a lot of other psychedelic conversations and topics. I was just curious, if anything stood out to you. If you saw from your collective knowledge.
I wouldn't say it's a trend, but what I do notice is that psychedelics, the mushroom end of things and others, are really seem to be following the path of medicinal cannabis. By patients saying that, hey, this stuff works, taking people to court, governments to court, in order to force change. And that's exactly what's happening, especially on the psilocybin end of things. Excuse me. I really figured that they would try to get ahead of that and maybe try to correct things that they thought that they did wrong in the medicinal cannabis. But I see that trend. I would call that a trend, I guess, that the psychedelic end of it for the patients is following the same route as the cannabis end. And in the end, the courts will force the politicians in order to do something. And unfortunately, let's hope that they give them something better than what we started with the cannabis thing, where patients have always had to take the government back to the courts in order to make changes, and the government would only do incremental changes instead of big wholesale changes. And let's just hope when it gets to that point with the psychedelics that they do it right off the bat properly, and versus a haphazardly way it was with cannabis. And as we know right now, before the Supreme Court of Canada is a challenge on the psilocybin issue for patients. So keep your fingers crossed.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Have you had anybody come to you about different medicinal mushrooms or psilocybin lately?
Yeah, I have. I've had people that have come to me, and usually it has been over a mental health issue, anxiety or depression. Anything along that line. I'm not highly educated in it or anything like that, and usually what I'll recommend them to somebody on the network who has been involved with it, or somebody, or direct them to like a website or maybe for some information. But no, I won't give people the advice on the psychedelic ends of things when I personally don't have a lot of education in it, unlike on the cannabis end of things that I did for years. So,
yeah, I guess I was just curious.
I'll agree with them that there's benefit. There is benefit there. There's no doubt about it. The science is there. We are reporting on it on the psychedelics and cannabis educational news here on the network.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing it. So yeah. There's benefit, yes. But
I guess that's why I was curious if people were asking you, because you've opened up, like, from being this, because for you it was like this underground, like, cannabis thing, and you know growing it over time, and now it's expanded into these other realms. And yeah, I guess I was just curious if you felt like a shift in, people talking to you specifically, being the guy, the cannabis guy.
Obviously, more people are talking to me about psychedelics than they did in those previous years. But yeah, at one time in our small town of 3,500 people, I was that guy. I was that guy that they came to for the information. The cafe, I had a display in the cafe, because the cafe owner, Gerhard, he was very supportive of hemp and cannabis, very supportive. And I had a section in his cafe just to have information, Treating Yourself magazine or anything else, brochures, all that stuff. And that itself helped, open the door for more people to see. And at one point, Gerhard was trying to sell the cafe, and they said I went with him. I went with the cafe. Al stays. I sell a cafe. Because It's what, it was information. It was educational. It was well worth, and people really enjoyed coming. Like I said,
Yeah.
those early, I had 50 people into the cafe to educate them, and people want to know, and they still do.
Yeah, it's so important, it's almost like a remembering, like we've all got amnesia or something like that and forgot that we're one with nature or something.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to the psychedelic end of things, especially with the psilocybin, it's a mushroom. It's a natural plant. Cannabis is a natural plant.
Yeah.
Right? And, I always recommend, do your research, get some education on it, and go from there. We're not, and these people aren't that 20-year-old that I was back in the day and take 5 hits of acid or whatever at one time, right? Now it's, get some education, learn what you're about to get into, and there's people like yourselves that can educate those people and take them through their journey in order to help them.
So around Pace Radio, what's some stuff, like I know you guys have expanded into CBG TV and things like that, and if anybody wanted to get involved, do a show about something that they were passionate about in this space, or to maybe be one of the sponsors that showed in the commercials, to share their own message, how would somebody go about doing that?
They can email me at al@paceradio.net. Really quick and easy. It's once again al@paceradio.net. They can send me an email there, and I'll get back to them. Whether it's people looking to do a show, broadcast, reach out, talk to me about it. That's how everybody else has gotten involved. And you've got something to offer, then we'll add you to the set on the CB. For a perfect example on that, 2 weeks ago, during the Pace Radio show, somebody kept sending us messages, and we were responding in vocal, sending back a type message. We just respond over the broadcast, and in the end, what I did is I invited them onto the show, sent them the link. They came onto the broadcast, joined us. And now they're joining CBG TV as a provider, a content provider.
That's wonderful.
You just never
Congrats.
know. Yeah. It was just a random thing. I've never invited anybody on to join in during the process of a show, and I did that. And now that person is going to be joining here the CBG network. So it's all about giving people a spot and a place to be heard, and as I've said, voices and patient stories is what we're about, and getting that information out to people. So if you've got something that you think that you can do as a broadcast and you want to talk to us about it, I'll sit down and talk to you. And we're running 9 to 10 broadcasts now, so we can always add more. There's always room.
One of the things that I loved when we first met was you asked me a question of, so Ashley, what are you doing while everybody else is watching TV? And we know that you've got Pace Radio. What else is it that you're up to these days?
What else other than doing the Pace Radio end of things? Well, I moved to the country, is what I did. I moved out of the suburban life, moved in the country. I've never worn rubber boots so much, and it's not because of sheep, I can tell you that. It's because the ground is wet, okay? But we've moved out here. It's more calming, it's more relaxing. I'm doing some walking, hiking on the property because there's 44 acres here, with some ponds and some swamps.
Frogs are coming soon.
Frogs are out. The frogs are out. I got to record last night. Yeah. The frogs are out. We've got 2 ponds here, and the swamps are down at the other end of the property. And so I'm spending time out here and relaxing with the dogs, and sort of getting back to nature. Some stuff that we did in the old days. Maybe a little bit of camping here and there. We actually do it right on the property. And then what else? Oh, growing my own cannabis, as I've been doing for the last 20 years, somewhere around there. And I've always been an indoor grower. So now living out in the country, working the grounds in order to have a garden, whether it's a cannabis garden or a vegetable garden. Yeah, exactly. I mentioned that we had a vegetable garden in our last place, but it was small. Now we're here, we've got more room to have a bigger garden. And I can tell you, Dale is going, oh no, I can't eat all those tomatoes.
Yeah,
How do we keep up with the cucumbers?
Yeah. My uncle used to do garden tours when cannabis was still illegal, and he'd be like, okay, here's the blackberries, here's the tomatoes, here's the Jamaican tomatoes.
Yeah, it's just so many.
They all grow together.
Tomatoes. I don't eat them, so I can't help her. But yeah,
Jamaican tomatoes, like the cannabis plant, he was growing it right in his regular food garden.
Oh, was it? There you go. Why?
Nobody asked questions.
Yeah. Why not grow them right in your vegetable garden?
Yeah.
It's companion growing.
Yep.
Just like we talked about at the beginning. It's companion growing with the other plants. Nature.
Yeah.
And this morning I looked out and I saw the rabbit making his way through the garden.
It's good too if you do a perimeter of food for them, like carrots and stuff like that around the perimeter. They stay out of the
garden, eh? Okay, Well, it's good to know. Well, right now I can tell you because the ground's just getting warmed up here. So
or clover. If instead of grass you plant clover, they won't go in the garden because they're so busy eating the clover. Which then you never have to mow your lawn if you have clover because it only grows that big, and they're pretty flowers.
Oh, there you go. I got that. I made a note of that.
It's wonderful.
And stop the rabbits from raiding our garden.
Yeah. If you've got leftover flax seeds, you can throw that down instead of grass seed, and you can get bags of flax seeds for like $2 in the grocery store.
Okay. And
they're
just
pretty blue flowers. Yeah.
Okay.
Clovers you can get at the garden store in like big bags. It's wonderful. It's such a great time of year. It's so exciting.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well that's what it is.
Pace Radio Network, here at paceradio.net.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
In February of 2022, the Victoria Cannabis Buyers Club and Ted Smith were fined $6.5 million. This for helping 8,500 patients with access to medical cannabis. In our interview with Ted, he spoke to us about how people can donate to help in an upcoming court challenge. And here is part of that interview. From what I've seen lately, I believe that you've got something that you're trying to do as far as fundraising to deal with this next court challenge.
For now, people can write checks directly to Jack Lloyd Law Corporation or send e-transfers to save the VCBC at gmail.com. I guess those are the two easiest ways for people to help right now.
PACE Radio is the People Advocating Cannabis Education Radio Network.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.
Welcome back to the Integration Station. I'm Naturally Ashley, here today with Al Graham from Pace Radio Network. And you're kind of the guy behind it all. So this is a really unique experience.
It has been. Just like, because PACE, just so everybody knows, stands for People Advocating Cannabis Education. And that's what it's all about. It's about the people advocating cannabis education, and other people like myself who wanted to speak out because they were a patient themselves and they found the medicinal benefits and they were looking for a place to be able to educate other people. And when I mentioned those home shows and things in the beginning, in the first segment, that's where PACE got its start, was there, and that was because people wanted to help educate other people, but they didn't want to be involved in a big group that would call voting and so on and so forth. And when that all ended up or stopped, it all transitioned over to audio and do the radio, and because of that, we've been able to get patients' voices out and learn ourselves about other people. As I said earlier, when patients share their story, they educate other people. I haven't dealt with a lot of conditions that other people use cannabis for, but by talking with them, I was able to learn about things and how they could help people with the epileptic end of things and dealing with seizures. Myself personally, because I mentioned in the first segment about the pain issue, and just like about the eating end of things. But cannabis helped me eat. It dealt with my pain issues. It also, I found that have a racy brain, always goes, never seems to stop, never takes a break, always thinking. And cannabis helps slow those things down in order to calm things down, and I would say make me a calmer person. And because it helped me be a calmer person and not get upset and try not to worry about things, that in itself is a benefit for somebody like with Crohn's disease, because stress is one of the things that they say can help trigger the Crohn's disease. And by becoming more patient and calming, that helps benefit me immensely. So even that end of thing, to help me put a smile on my face and instead of being upset at something. But and then other stuff that I learned over the years, because of the fact that I'm talking with patients and doing those documentary films, was the fact that the documentary films weren't just any films; they were educational films that you would hear from Dr. Lester Grinspoon, rest in peace, Dr. Grinspoon, Dr. Melvin, Dr. Courtney. There's a whole slew of different researchers that I would listen to and hear what they had to say. And as I told the people, these are the researchers. These are the guys who are doing these things. Listen to what they have to say. And I would have people that would leave there that were obviously a lot more educated than when they came in. And at one of the shows I did in Campbellford, I had a police officer that came in to get a coffee. He looked around, saw everybody watching the movie up on the screen. His wife worked at the local school. She told her students that her husband had gone in there and he felt that he was in a science class with a bunch of grayheads. So the education that I was providing for people was educational information. So people could learn about the cannabinoid system and learn that our body is covered in it. So obviously some places more than other places, and teach them the medicinal benefits. And it was, like, to me, like I said, educational every time I watched them. And watching them, because I had it split up as 4 different types of movies: Prohibition, Science, and others. And those science ones were always movies that brought people in because they wanted to know the information. And I wanted to know it too. Unfortunately, I haven't done those in probably 4 years, 5 years now. So there's the sort of that saying, if you don't use it, you lose it, right? And there's probably a lot of information and knowledge that I've gained over the years that, sometimes it might just take a trigger in order to, oh yeah, right? And because it's there, but to bring it out all the time isn't always you just sort of don't forget things. You just sort of don't remember. I guess it's what I'm trying to say. But it was good. I enjoyed those times, and now we do it on the radio. You just don't see the. It's not the. Doing it in person was always a different experience versus doing it over the radio.
You get a different audience too.
You do.
But there might be more of them, especially in today's world when there's more mental health issues and more people are staying home, and we had the government telling us everybody stay home.
Stay home. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that during that stage, cannabis stores were an essential here in Ontario, and there are a lot of people who access the stores. According to the surveys, half the people who go into the stores do so for medicinal benefits, and anxiety is one of those benefits that people are going in there for. So it works. It's just so sad that people don't have a medical outlet where they can go and actually talk to somebody. As far as without because people get turned down at the doctor. Some people don't like approaching the doctors, but they won't mind approaching the pharmacist and asking them something. Somebody who knows about them. So why not allow them to talk to a person at a counter who's educated in cannabis in order to help them? Unfortunately, all our stores here in Canada are all recreational, and people can't talk about the medicinal benefits. But yet, all those people are going in there, and without having being able to talk to somebody, who has some training or whatever knowledge on the cannabis end of things. It should be.
There are some cannabis coaches out there now. Yeah. There are some people, but I think the best place for anybody to start is just ask the stoner what they know.
Well, yeah.
The conversation.
Yeah, and that's what it was like with me. Like I said before, I had doctors that actually told people to go down and see the guy at the cafe because they didn't know anything about cannabis. Where I was able to, if I didn't have the answer, I could direct them to it. I always carried, when I was doing those movies, I always carried information with me. I had a printout that was 465 pages long of just medicinal links, 10 links per page, and everything was categorized in alphabetical order. And this wasn't done by me. This was done by a retired school teacher in the U.S. Granny Storm was her name. Granny Storm's, and it was medicinal list. And I had this binder, and I carried it around with me everywhere I went. And I was able to direct people. Somebody would ask me, well, is there any benefit to lupus? Well, if I hadn't seen anything about lupus, I could take my book, open this book up, and find information, and I'll say, look at this. There's 3 pages on information on lupus, and direct those people to those pages so they could go find the information that they needed. And then they would take that information and maybe talk to the doctor about it in order to be able to get, license in order so they could access the medicine that they felt that they worked. I know, like when I got licensed, one of the first things my doctor asked me was, have you tried it? So obviously I was able to answer him yes.
Yeah.
What I said to him also was, check your records. You'll see that you never prescribed me an opiate prescription. And he hadn't, so he didn't have any problem, and he doesn't have any problem with what with what I've done over the years. So
yeah, and there shouldn't be any problem. And if there is, and you've tried a lot of other things or don't want to, then get another doctor. Somebody who's willing to work with you.
Correct, and many people have. Over the years, there's many people who were looking for doctors, and there was times there where there was well-known doctors where people could be sent to, but unfortunately, they've sort of been, been sort of run out, I guess. There's been some doctors have done many patients, and when they do that, the College of Physicians can get upset at them. And some doctors have lost their license because of they consider over-prescribing or prescribing cannabis to too many patients. But as one doctor said on the national news was, well, if the other doctors were signed, I wouldn't have to.
Not only, that's a great comment. One thing that comes up, I work with so many nurses, and every single one of them realizes that the pharmaceuticals are overprescribed, and that most of the time they're treating symptoms from the pharmaceuticals with other pharmaceuticals. So then they get stressed out and out of alignment, and then they need the pharmaceuticals but don't want them.
Yeah, exactly. I was on 32 pills a day at one time, along with a self-injection that I had to stick in my stomach. I did that for 3 years. I'd never stuck a needle in my body in my life. And I got the prescription for methotrexate, which people would know deal with the cancer end of things. It deals with your immune system. And Crohn's is an autoimmune disease. So they're trying to rebuild my immune system. And because my bowels were so bad, doctor didn't feel that the methotrexate pill would be absorbed into my system. And the only other way to do it is to do an injection. So I got the prescription. I went to the drugstore and I picked it up. And the needles and all that stuff. I didn't have a clue what I just gave the paperwork to the pharmacist, and he gathered up everything. And I thought, well, I don't know how to do this. I haven't got a clue. But yet here I had syringes, needles, and my prescription drug. So I called the health unit at where I go to my family doctor. Called up to there, and booked an appointment for them to do this. And they said, well, why do we got to do it? And I said, well, I don't know how to. So who else is going to? So I went up there and to get it. And the nurse came out of her room in behind the glass there and come into the room to give me my injection. She was dressed in a gown, goggles, mask, and a respirator. And I looked at her and I said, why are you wearing all that stuff? And she said, well, you need to wear this for safety because this drug can lead to cancer. And I just looked at her and I said, you want to stick that stuff in me? And you're wearing all this safety stuff?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I wasn't too impressed. So I went to the doctors the next time. We had a big talk about it all. And in the end, he showed me how to do it. I ended up taking it. I had to take the drug because I was on another drug at the same time, and it wasn't because of the side effects. It was because of the way the drugs interacted, working in order to knock down my immune system and build my immune system back up. And
It sounds like a gamble.
It is. Well, see, the drug I was taking at the time, Remicade, it just like the other drugs, side effects, right? And one of those side effects was cancer. A 2 to 3% chance of cancer that you can get it from that drug, and I got cancer. I ended up with, like I said earlier, I had melanoma. I had it on my chest. I'll tell you, they flipped out about that, and they got, we dealt with that pretty quick. We have melanoma in our family, and it always hasn't been for the best. So, in the end, it's just I lost it again. I hate that.
Well, it's okay. You've been on this healing journey, though. So, let's just switch gears here. Tell us about, how is it that you're integrating this medicine now for overall healing?
For my overall healing, I make a infused coconut oil that I use for anything that I want to make, as far as cooking wise, whether it's even putting something in a pan, or I also make capsules, and that's just with the CBD strain. And then I'm a smoker, unfortunately, more than edibles. Edibles in the beginning for me were a problem. A lot of the edibles were baked goods. Crohn's disease and putting baked goods down your system are not always the best thing to do. So I ended up being more along the lines of a smoker when it comes to the cannabis, as well as the concentrates and vaporizing. I've got a Volcano vaporizer, which I've had for 12 years. And
yeah, they last.
It still works, it's
yeah.
And I vaporize in the house. Okay. A lot of people, I've owned my own home all the way through this journey until we just moved into our situation where we're living now, here with our daughter and son-in-law in a granny suite, which is working out good. My daughter just passed her nursing exam.
Congrats.
So, Dad's sick. Who knows? Down the road, she'll be able to help out at times. And at our other places, I never smoked in the house. I always vaporized in the house, and I stepped outside when it comes to smoking. It was just something I did for my wife Gail, and for anybody who came into our house, whether it was our grandkids or friends who didn't consume. So that was
How does your family feel about your consumption?
Well, I'll tell you, the very first time when I told my kids that Dad was licensed patient and he was legally allowed to use cannabis, one of my kids said, fine, no problem. The other child was quite upset. They were a DARE graduate. And because they were a DARE graduate, they believed that Dad was going to go on to hard drugs. When in fact, Dad was using cannabis to avoid going to a drug, a synthetic heroin is basically what I call it, in order to avoid an addiction issue by using cannabis. They went on from there a few years later and wrote a thesis in college on the benefits of medical cannabis because of what they saw.
Yeah.
And what they saw in their dad, and what I was able to show them. And it's it's great that, you know, seeing is believing. And when people see that cannabis has helped people, and people see whether they psychedelics, they see that that helps a person, whether they're a consumer or not. How do you argue with it?
How did you persist in that moment? Like, knowing that you disappointed your daughter, like, how did you persist on your path? Because I feel like a lot of people struggle with that when they're, you know, starting to come out of the closet, or they're ready to start getting curious to this, and then they tell a few people that they really truly love and that have always loved them, but then, you know, the feedback isn't exactly what they expect. You know, and then some of them give up. Like, I literally, people call me in those moments. It's like, you know, so sharing it, because you've been successful in this, so hearing it from you is going to make a difference.
You know, I can't remember exactly what I said to her all those years ago, but I can tell you it was a week. It was a week-long journey of her being really upset, like tears, because of the fact that I was using cannabis, and I had to, you know, say that, you know, prove points, you know, be, you know, right out front as far as, you know, the difference, you know, the pros and cons. The dad could use this. Sure, this is the legal route. Dad could take the pills, but Dad could turn into, you know, a really grouchy son of a bitch because of opiate crankiness, to the fact that the addiction, and who knows where it goes from there. There's people who don't. There's people, you know, who may have success with it. I don't know, but you know, I hear so many bad things. You know, the negative end, from feeling dopey to the fact that it's in the news every week. It's in the news about people dying from, you know, opiate overdose. And where did, you know, some people think that those are the people who are sitting in the back alley injecting themselves. It's their neighbor who maybe was given a prescription from a doctor.
2 weeks is all it takes.
Yeah. And then next thing you know, their prescription is cut off. And where did they go from there?
Yeah.
And where the patients turn? They turn to the street. You know, it's like shutting down the compassion clubs, shutting down BC. Where do those patients go? They go to the street. Just where they don't want them to go, but yet they won't provide a reason why.
Well, this is one of those things that's out of alignment. Somebody could say one thing, but it's the actions that tell the truth. So often we're like, oh, we're out of alignment, No, it's that we're seeing these things that don't add up, and we end up in the state of confusion. But, you know, you can't believe somebody's words. It's about the actions. They say, we don't want these people in the streets and we're going to clear them out. But really, that is part of the end game. If you follow the money on a lot of this stuff, it all goes to the same people. You know, yeah. And
you know, those, you know, it leads to people on this, as you mentioned, on the street. And you could have someone who had an excellent job, making good money, had a wife and kids, and had a great house. Got an injury somewhere, and then next thing you knew, the spiral begins.
Yeah, 2 weeks is all it takes on opiates for somebody who doesn't have an addictive personality. But the average person's addicted to 8 things or more.
That's 2 weeks without an addictive personality.
Yeah, so it could only be once for somebody who's already got a history of addiction.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it's, as you said, they end up, you know, we were talking about the one pill, it gets an effect where you're on the opioids, and then they try to give you something else, and they try to give you something else, and everything all mixed up, and your system doesn't know where to go, what to do. And you know, there's a place for them, and there's a place, you know, not for them. Like, you know, I haven't obviously been through this whole journey of just relying on cannabis the whole time. As I mentioned, I was on the bio-drug Remicade for several years. I ended up hospitalized another time And because of that blockage issue, they couldn't put me, not the blockage issue, sorry. It was because of the cancer issue. Because of the cancer issue, they had to take me off of Remicade. They couldn't put me back on it because of the problems that it could cause in my system. Because of being away from it and building antibodies and stuff like that. So they left me alone, didn't put me on any, basically, you know, I was just on vitamins and supplements like that. And for 2 years until I ended up with another blockage and ended up in the hospital, and they put me on another biological drug. This one's called entheogens. The side effects are nowhere near what the Remicade was. But I'm still on it, and I don't know where I'd be. Like, obviously, you know, I went 2 years in between these drugs. It wasn't until that blockage issue, and who knows, maybe I'd still be without it if I hadn't eaten some trail mix. That's what they say got blocked. Put me in the hospital. What? Don't go down, come up. Believe me.
Yeah.
It's no fun. But you know, it'd be nice someday not to have to be on the pharmaceutical drugs, and who knows, maybe there'll be a time where I'll be able to get away without that. But right now, I need it as well as my cannabis.
Yeah. I'm going to message you a couple things that can help you out, or at least point you in the right direction. When we go to commercial break right now, we'll let our sponsors share some things. I'll send you a text over. And then when we have you back, I'm going to pick your brain a little bit more, and we'll get a little deeper into allogram.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks now.
Listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Are you a cannabis content creator? Are you looking for a place to have your content seen? If you answer yes to both questions, then you need to check out cbgtv.com. CBG TV, broadcasting to a worldwide audience. Find us at cbgtv.com.
We are people advocating cannabis education